All
We're
right.
good.
Awesome. Well, guys, wanted to welcome you both to the Brutal Buddha Longevity Podcast, episode one. So, thank you so much for being here. We're extremely grateful to have Matt Miller on the line, one of our celebrity guests who has been with Brutal Buddha from the very beginning, is one of the world's top fitness, wellness enthusiasts, aficionados, has built his own brand in the world of yoga training among so many other things. And we're just so delighted to have you here with us today, Matthew. So I guess first and foremost, just so everyone knows, my name is Evan. I'm co-founder of Brutal Buddha, along here with Ro, who's also on the line. We are an international brand that focuses on men's longevity, health span, and inspiring fulfillment for men, with a goal of helping over 1 million men live an average of 5 years longer or more. So that's a bit about us. We'll obviously go into some Q&A in a bit, and it'll just be a fireside chat for about 20 minutes for any of our listeners. But with that, Matt, can you please just introduce yourself, share a little bit about your journey through life, including how you got into health and wellness, yoga, and a bit about Broga as well?
Hey, Evan, nice to see you. And Ro, good to see you on our first podcast. And thanks for having me. I really appreciate that. And nice to be a part of, like you mentioned, the Brutal Buddha team. I remember my very first pair of Brutal Buddha shorts, and just the fact that somebody was actually thinking about something a little bit differently and a little bit more functionally was sort of right up my mindset of how sort of I like to do things. So real pleasure to be here today. And yeah, so a little bit about me. Yeah, that was quite a big me up, wasn't it? um, but I don't think I'm necessarily that special. I do have a good sports background and a good fitness background, and I can probably talk about a lot of things. I started a sport when I was in, very young, and before high school came around, I was doing things like, tri-star athlete, doing football and water polo and swimming, and played football through into college. And so, yeah, I think sports always been a huge part of my life, and fitness as a part of that has been a huge part of my life. And really glad to have that as part of my sort of background. But that's a changing feast, right? And that's changed and evolved over the years to be other things. I think we kind of go through little stages, don't we, in life, where we're kind of like thinking about things in terms of like what we want to do and what we like to do, and that shifts. So I didn't always stay with football. I ended up doing other things. I didn't stay with swimming. I didn't stay with water polo. You kind of move on. I got into, like we see now, most young people, this whole sort of like Gymshark generation, are into
Yeah.
the gym and aesthetics and looking good. And so, I came about that maybe a little bit different than most. I came about it from a action of like, I hurt myself playing football. I got injured and I started rehabbing myself and doing yoga. So that was kind of my sort of like journey into bodybuilding and that kind of thing. So
So is that
a little bit.
when you practiced yoga for the first time? Was when you were rehabbing from an injury?
That came so much later. It came so much later, actually. At the time, like yoga is so new, actually,
Mm.
like in the Western world. It's quite a new thing. And at the time, it wasn't a thing.
Hmm.
It really wasn't even an option. So as part of my rehab, that was definitely not part of that rehab. But later, um, after I was, after my bodybuilding career sort of like peaked, I won sort of medals in super heavyweight bodybuilding in both the US and the UK. And I started to, it's like any athlete, you start to degenerate, all your joints go. and
Mm.
the injury that I had had in football, that sort of came back to haunt me after sort of abusing my body in bodybuilding, and I needed to go back into surgery, have my hips redone. So I had two hip replacements.
Wow,
Yeah, that
that's
was
no joke.
pretty gnarly. And
That is gnarly.
yeah, yeah. So that was really bad. And so getting back off of your feet from that, and mind you, I was training people at the time. I was It's quite tough, but that's how yoga sort of came into it through that rehab. And funny story, so it's actually this is kind of my transition from moving to from the US over to the UK. So that's why my accent maybe sounds a bit weird. All my American friends say I've got like a British accent, and and everyone in the UK says I sound like I'm a California, person. So I don't know
Mhm.
where my accent is now anymore, but I did move to the UK and for a job working for a kind of like an up and coming gym chain, and help them with their group fitness product. Um,
It's awesome.
Kind
Now
of
tell
bring
me,
the
Matt,
American.
is this before your Lululemon ambassadorship? Because I know you were one of the
Yeah, yeah,
early
yeah, yeah,
Lululemon
yeah.
ambassadors, right? Okay.
Yeah, definitely. So it was it, so the so basically I came over to the UK to work for this company called Gymbox and help them with their group fitness and
Mm.
expansion. At the time they had two gyms, and now they have like over 15. And I was working on sort of this idea of like how do we encourage group fitness in like the overall population of the members, not just women. And
Mm.
so I came up with all the crazy ideas. That's sort of what they wanted me for, was this sort of like California American sort of like what's new, what's hot, what's cool, what can we get people excited about. So I think I did things like maybe in 2000, and we're back in 2002. I brought over the
Mm.
first um, functional fitness frame made by, at the time I brought it over from Colorado, from Beaver Fit, and had it shipped over. And I was doing the first functional fitness frame class ever in the
Wow.
UK, uh, as one of my little kind of like innovative things. We did these crazy dance classes. I had some video producer take like music videos, probably highly illegal. Take music videos like the telephone video with Lady Gaga and Beyonce, and we turned it into we broke it down, the dance routine, into chunks, and then so turned that into an hour class. You could learn the dance moves for the video during a class in chunk by chunk. So by the end of the class, you're doing the whole dance routine, and that stuff like this went over amazing. And yeah, and then from then, I was on a TV show called The Fat Fighters, one of the hosts of that on Channel 4. And that sort of got the attention of what you were saying, which is a brand at the time, which was really unknown, called Lululemon Athletica, which is kind of the headline yoga brand, that kind of started the whole thing. And that was really exciting to be asked to be one of their first ambassadors outside of North America. And at the time, and this has a real good relevance to you guys at Brutal Buddha. The company was founded by this really charismatic CEO named Chip Wilson,
Mm.
and he was absolutely a character and an amazing visionary
Mm.
of you know taking things sort of out of the box, and how do we explore this. And I don't know if you know the story, but he started Lululemon um, actually selling with one product, and it was exactly the same product that Buddha started with, which was a
Mhm.
pair of shorts.
Yeah, yeah, we know the story. We've listened to several podcasts, and we actually,
Yeah,
very much look up to him. So it's incredible, how many investments he put into the business early on, and I think that charisma ties in also to the vision that he had, right? So obviously,
yeah,
in the '90s, early 2000s, there was this massive vision to transform the world of yoga, for all people, right? And that vision has
yeah.
been clearly seen through. So Matt, this is really so interesting for us because here we are on this video cast, I should say, and you're talking about the rise of Lululemon, a matter of plural decades ago. Yet here you are
Yeah.
looking like you're still in your early 30s, right? I mean, you embody the concept of health span, longevity. You've done this your whole life, not just aesthetically, but in many of our one-off or two-on-one conversations that we've had in this group,
Mm,
you have practiced so much in the way of mental health, sleep health, right? Mood health, emotional intelligence health, right? So it's embodying all of the aspects of health and wellness from a holistic point of
yeah.
view. And I would just wonder, how did all of this tie in from that experience in rehab, from a yoga perspective, to help you decide that you wanted to start and create Broga, and maybe share just a little bit about what
Ah,
Broga is for our audience?
oh, thanks. Yeah, I think it's sort of this. I think with that, when you're starting a business, you have like with anybody, and and I probably learned this from Chip himself, and sounds like you did too, which was, you sort of look at the world with first with a personal passion, and then second, trying to fill a need in the world, right? And so if you could do that, then you hopefully have half of the recipe for success, right? And so what I found was, this is back in, back in the 2010s, that there's very few men doing yoga, right?
Mm. That's extremely true. I mean, less so now, but about 10, 15 years ago, it was
Yeah.
it was very
Do you know what
much
the do you know what
a
the
need.
percentage do you know what the global percentage was 10, 15 years
I,
ago?
I would say three.
Well, it was under 10.
Okay, yeah, more like six, seven, or maybe eight or something.
Yeah, it's just under 10, just under 10. And now we're not yet into, we're just approaching, maybe 30, right? So that's been a hard slog to do, but I was one that I wanted to take on, right? And so I thought to myself, part of working with Lululemon was this idea of, I didn't have to, but you're asked to teach classes, right? So
Mhm.
the whole idea of what I was doing with gym boxing, creating group fitness classes, I kind of just transferred that over into the yoga world. I didn't have a qualification, didn't have anything, right? But I knew about group fitness. I licensed it to teach every kind of group fitness there is, and
Mhm.
so including like flexibility. So I just started applying that over to the sort of what I would do for flexibility, and turning that into a little bit of flexibility and strength, and workshop that on sort of like punters, because they weren't paying for the class, in coming up to a free class at Lululemon. And I got really into it, and I had a really good sort of equal gender participation in those classes. Really good. I was also learning yoga from some of the other female ambassadors. I was the only male. There were six other women, so it's just me and six women, and all those women were yoga teachers, famous yoga teachers. I was the only one who wasn't a yoga teacher, so I was really out of place. But anyway, I think the bug got me, and I'm like, I need to get more serious about this. I need more education about this. I actually, went to India, to Rishikesh, got certified, became a proper yoga teacher, got sort of that little extra background, and sort of that new sort of like level of understanding that I didn't have, so I could apply that to this, and it just sort of like kept going from there. then we started doing those classes at Gymbox. They were huge
Wow.
hits, and it just sort of like, oh, I'm like, I can sell this product, right? This needs to go out bigger, and that's kind of how it.
Mhm.
That's kind of how that happened. But
Yeah,
I, you know, we
you learn the tricks of the trade almost, and you decided, you know what? Why am I not doing this in my own vision and my own passion, and kind of putting your own spin on it? And it sounds like that's what you did.
Yeah, and you know what, and it really took all that other background. You know, yoga for men it has been over the last 10 years has been a real battle,
Mm,
Evan, a real battle, I have to tell you, because we are fighting against you know male ego. I always say men have a problem, which is ego. Women are crazy, men have ego. That's how I kind of
mhm,
gender bias things, right? And that's kind of our both of our nemesis. Women will gender. I'm making a big gender assumption here. Will spin themselves out of control with overthinking things, and go crazy with that. And men have a completely different problem, which is our ego gets in the way of ourselves,
mhm,
and is a huge roadblock. And that's especially true, I think, in fitness, right? And so we've been really having to fight against that. And in group fitness, you you really see it, because ego doesn't allow you to look bad in front of your peers. That's one of the rules of ego, right? Look good
mm,
amongst your peers. And so that's the biggest barrier to entry. And so what you have to do if you're going to get men involved in group exercise is you have to get the ego on board.
mhm.
CrossFit is a really good example of that, right?
Right.
Because CrossFit, we see probably the largest male participation in group exercise in CrossFit activities. And that's because ego is built into a CrossFit workout and a CrossFit environment, right? Sort of do the best you can, do the most you can, meet your PB, max it out.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. It's so invigorating to hear your story and really understand how you transformed over your career, because it sounds like now you built a Goliath of a following with Broga, right? I'm a Broga certified
Mm,
yoga teacher, and I've incorporated it into my practice, and it's going to stick with me through life. The disciplines I learned through the program, even though it wasn't hundreds and hundreds of hours, I think it's important for any yoga practitioner to understand the sequences, but more so the anatomy, how to actually lead yourself, or if you wanted to teach a friend. So maybe you
yeah.
can give us a quick snapshot from your perspective, how you see the world of men's wellness evolving over the coming 5 to 10 years, and also what you'd like to see done differently and better from companies like Brutal Buddha, or even the likes of big Goliaths like Nike, Lululemon. What can we do better to help men's wellness?
Yeah, I think it's a real big thing, because I think a lot of focus is placed on women's wellness, and I think that's really important. But we do see it and we hear about it a lot. And if we're talking men's wellness, the only big brands I can think of that do it is Movember, is like the one that comes to mind at the beginning of thought in terms of men's wellness. But it's harder to do because, again, we were talking about ego and being a barrier to entry for people doing group exercise. Well, it's the same thing that's going to get in the way of men wanting to focus on on wellness generally, mental wellness or physical wellness. And so you have to face the ego problem. And I think it's tough, Evan, and how we can do that is, I think, is being um, you know more inclusive. I think, and I think there's two things we're seeing going on. Number one, we're seeing safe spaces for um, for women to do sort of wellness events. We're also seeing safe spaces for men to do their own wellness, men's workshops, men's groups, and I think both of those are really good. I think having a safe space is really good, and having sort of like like topical conversation with people who are in your niche or in your little small tribe is really good. But ultimately, if I'm being sort of like flash forwarding and in my wish list is that we didn't do that and we were actually being inclusive, and
Mhm.
that even if I'm like, I'll give you an example. So say there's sort of like, there's a woman's retreat on, whatever, women's, perimenopausal sort of like effects. That's a very niche
Mhm.
thing. And it's a very women focused thing.
Mhm.
But in my eyes, especially, if you're in that age, why wouldn't that be something that you might want to do with your spouse, and
Mhm.
maybe have some other subjects that were maybe more geared towards him, sort of like, testosterone degeneration and how that affects, the hormone side for a man, right? Because,
Right.
there's hormone sides on both gender sides are happening at that age. And I think that why wouldn't both people in that relationship benefit from learning about both issues, even if it didn't directly relate to them? Does that
Mhm.
does that make sense?
It
I'd
makes
be curious to.
100%, because when I think about even my thought process around teaching in a couple of weeks at a small festival here in Asia called Wonderfruit, I was thinking about what I learned in Broga and how inclusivity is so important in the communities that you've built over time. And at Brutal
Yeah,
Buddha, though we are a men's focused wellness platform, we still do very much invite the wives and the partners and the daughters and the mothers of all of these men to get involved, because at the end
yeah,
of the day, team and collective effort. And Ro, as our CEO, also manages our email marketing efforts. So he's getting the constant feedback, from sharing case studies and success stories and promotions and value adds like this podcast into the community. And I would wonder from you, Ro, as well, like what are some of the things you've heard around inclusivity or positive things that our fans have seen in the Brutal Buddha wellness community that we can chat
yeah.
about here?
Am I off base or not? What does your data show?
I think you're spot on, Matt. I mean, I'm encouraged and I like a lot of what I'm hearing from you. I think when I think about the world, it seems like there's these um if I kind of summarize what you've mentioned over the last sort of decades, there's like, there was kind of the rise of, women's fitness, yoga, health. Men, didn't really have a space that they felt as comfortable. And then the world is kind of moving towards, it's improving for both. You mentioned safe spaces for men and then also women. But I think that is what's missing, is that next step where you create that safe space
Absolutely.
actually for both, right? Because no company or organization, from my point of view, is creating that safe space for both the man and the woman together. And you could even add a third layer, which is a child, for example, or even
Yeah.
family, right? That's a whole nother element. But just to come back to what you said, Evan, in terms of what I hear about from the Brutal Buddha community, I mean, we get you know really incredible responses from our community in terms of how, I mean, this podcast is all about longevity. How do you live a longer, healthier, but more importantly, just more fulfilled life, right? I mean, you mentioned ego. As a man, like how do we get past some of these things that hold us back, whether it's being ashamed of looking a certain way or feeling a certain way. And we've just been really encouraged that the Brutal Buddha community has been extremely, vulnerable with us, right? Evan and I, as co-founders, we handwrite all of our emails. We do everything we can to get out of the world of, just apparel, right? At the end of the day, we're providing physical products to guys, but for us, it's really about how do you transform your lifestyle. And so you can see, if you follow our emails or if you're on our, Facebook or Instagram lives, Evan and I really try to incorporate things outside of the apparel, And what I mean by that is, we offer things like complimentary personal training classes for the guys out there that, they want to get in better physical shape, or for the guys out there that are struggling with, home life, family life, maybe a death in the family. We've even offered, therapy services to men in our community with some of our certified partners. So Evan and I really, our vision is to take this apparel brand to the next level, where people don't come into the community to talk about, what apparel they wear, or, how they're working out and how they're getting six-pack abs, but they come into the community and they say, hey guys, as a man, here is what I care about and what affects, myself, but also my partner, my wife or my husband, or my children. And how can the Brutal Buddha community be that support system that's highly inclusive? We don't judge. It's about creating a safe space, not only for the man. And my vision would be, Matt, that we create that safe space that you're talking about, where people come into the Brutal Buddha community and it's not just the men, or if it is just the men for now, eventually it's the men and the women and the children. And they can talk about some of these things that we've been talking about this call. So
Yeah,
that's what really excites
look at
me.
we faced this, when we started Broga, the Me Too campaign didn't exist, right? And so when we started Broga, it was very much like Brutal Buddha, with this men's sort of focus, right? And and very, very quickly early on, I had as a CEO, I had a little personal revelation about what what did that mean, and how could I achieve both of those things at the same time that you just said as a business, which would be, how do I be men's focus, but without being discriminatory, without losing that inclusivity. And we very quickly changed our marketing campaign from bro, meaning sort of like, that came from the word brother, and obviously that's a play on words, to being not brother as a gender, as a man, as being brother as brotherly, as in family. And we didn't change our tactics into what our core, sort of what we were doing and how we were talking, and the tone of voice, which was a masculine tone of voice, anatomical, very clinical, sort of like, the way we talk in class and the way we talk to people is very sort of like cut and dry, and there's no faff and no sort of, we're not trying to push any, there's no esoteric religious pushing on people of anything, but there's an openness there, if you want to have time and space to discover that on your own. And it's just sort of created that we kept our male voice, right? And but we always said that voice and being attracted to that light, it wasn't restricted to a gender. That's anybody who's attracted to that. So like, I think that's sort of my voice, like, that's for a company, that's the trick, which is sort of like, have your voice, have your safe space for whatever community you're doing. And for Brutal Buddha, that's of course, that's a male sort of, it's the same that we're doing, that male voice, that male sort of safe space. But the way we're saying it and the way we're doing it is, obviously, if you're any person, a woman, a wife, a girlfriend, or someone who's sort of like wants to tune into that, you're going to feel at home on the couch listening and being part of that as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'd agree wholeheartedly. And I think it's a really great topic. I'm sure we're going to have you back on for more podcast episodes. I just want to give the heads up that we've got maybe 2 or 3 minutes left. So I want to end by just asking you, Matt, where can people find you? What's exciting for people to look for in the world of Broga in the next few years? And any final thoughts to bring us home from both of you before we wrap up in the next 2-3 minutes?
Well, my, sort of, let me just finish by saying, if we're talking like journey, So I think over lockdown, my journey took me on a wholehearted looking at what we were doing and men and that struggle against ego and taking it down to the next generation, right? And starting to work on, if we're I've been working so hard on shaping this sort of generation, what would it look like if we started younger and looked at this Gen Alpha and shaping their minds. And so working on a yoga product and a children's book, which you can buy. It's called Hello, My Name is Bobo, and you can buy that on Amazon.
Check it out.
Yeah, and then the website is bobobear.online, and that's a children's book and a children's yoga program. Thinking about sort of like, how do we nip this in the bud with this problem of ego much earlier on. And I think looking to the future, because I work primarily with kids as my new sort of like passion. And this new generation Alpha, they don't see color and gender and difference the way that certainly a millennial or definitely not like a Gen Xer does. They are obsessed with inclusivity and helping people out and helping understand other people. And so I think a real big hope for the future is this next generation.
I love it. What a great way to wrap it up. And any final thoughts from you, Ro, before we wind down this first episode of the Brutal Buddha Longevity Podcast?
Yeah, no, I would just say, first of all, thank you, Matt. It's really been awesome having you here. It's super inspiring, to hear about what you do. And we continue to be big fans. And in a world where we do eventually roll out, it sounds like you're going down the route of kind of children's, teaching and coaching and fitness. If we do eventually get into that space, we'll definitely hook you up. But yeah, no, I mean, from my point of view, yeah, we're just really excited. I mean, we're this kind of up and coming apparel brand, but we've never really seen ourselves as an apparel brand. I mean, for us, it's all about men's wellness. It's, the physical side, which, that's where we get kind of the brutal, of the Buddha. It's the being determined and passionate and really going for whatever it is that you're interested, right? Whether it's your physical fitness or, or your career, or, even just being, kind of the family man at home who's kind of taking care of the kids or your parents, that type of thing, to, through to the Buddha, which obviously is the opposing force, which, we represent it as kind of, it's the yin and the yang, right? It's, it's peace and relaxation of the mind. And it's about, pausing and reflecting, and, being still and mindful in your everyday life.